So this is a common problem. Compressed formats are great for finding stuff. Like probably you want to avoid the compressed formats you often find online if you have a very clean or organic aesthetic, but don't feel limited to that. Grab anything and use it, but realize that editing programs usually aren't designed to work well with the kind of compressed formats that you find. Generally, you want to work with sound. You want AIFF or WAV, and then for movies, you want to convert things into a QuickTime codec. There's a term intermediate codec, meaning before your final version, you might want to turn an MP4 file you find you want to use into ProRes, right, before using it in After Effects, or for that matter, Premiere or Final Cut. So you want to, if you have some originals in those compressed formats, you want to get them out of that. And also another thing complicating things is that there are some weird old audio formats from previous decades that they're compressed, but they also end in WAV. There are some compressed. If you've ever had a WAV file you found online and it, if you threw it into Flash or After Effects and it crashed and it kept crashing, that's often why it's not actually an uncompressed WAV file. It's some weird old thing. Fortunately, your sound editing program can usually eat these.
It also happens for QuickTime. It also happens for QuickTime movies. I mean, none is a codec.
Right.
None is a lossy codec. When you select none, QuickTime none
is lossy.
Well, it is to a certain degree. It has a cutoff.
Oh dear Lord. Yeah. So there's a lot of potential pitfalls. Fortunately, if you drag something into an audio editor,
some of my furry friends,
you can usually save this as a clean, WAV uncompressed. So if you have Creative Suite, Audition is a wonderful addition to that because it's a great audio editor. It began life as Cool Edit, if anyone used to use that, by a company called Centrillion. Yeah. Then Adobe bought it and added it. It's really powerful. I actually do most of my sound design in an editing program. I'm not really an audio engineer. So I just cut things up and throw them into Final Cut or Premiere to do my sound design. And I like that. But nothing really beats, if you know a few tricks in audio engineering, a final pass through a real audio editing program. And also it's useful in cases like this, where if you have a dumb compressed or audio file, like something that keeps crashing your programs. This question comes up in really every class because it's not often widely known that these weird old formats, also called WAV, are lurking around or whatever. Throw it in an audio program and just save it as a lossless, WAV file. Location, And no matter what it is, usually that will give you a healthy file you can bring into your editor.
But then it plays over there, when you're...
Right. Yeah.
Or are you going to use
okay, very quick.
I know, but does it play in the After Effects when you...
Okay, we are going to cover this today, how to work with audio in After Effects, because it's pretty idiosyncratic. First of all, it's not really a program for editing audio. You really just want to finish, or at least get yourself up to a scratch track that you'll replace later, but have a single audio track that you've thrown in there, because it's not up to really editing. You can cut and paste things. So here we go, drag it in, and make a new composition. So you can drag it in, but first you'll notice it doesn't play. Right? After Effects doesn't have very much in the way of real-time audio support. You can hold down the Command key and scrub. You can Command click, and it'll play a small section over and over again. Or if you preview, have you figured out at this point you can set the work area with this bar here, and then you can say RAM preview. Where's the RAM preview button? Last one? Okay.
Some of my
So it's this button, or I just use Control-0 shortcut.
Some of my furry.
So this is not an ideal way to work with audio, right? That's why I really recommend cutting your animatics, say, in a real video editing program, like in Premiere. Yeah.
So, and sorry, you said earlier that not to use any lossless, or what kind of files can we, what kind of audio files can we use?
What I'd recommend here, this means all part one, just a second. It's getting very meta because we're screen capturing this. So what I'd recommend for audio files is AIFF or WAV uncompressed, right? Pretty much only. Like
Okay.
these are originally AFF was Mac, WAV was PC. They're pretty much interchangeable, and then only use MP3 for distribution. Like basically what codec should I use question. We come back to, are we talking about a master, a submaster, or a distribution copy? The master-submaster thing, again, comes up only when you really care about some work and you want to archive it in a totally lossless format for all time. So the master is the original archive lossless work. Usually it's too big to play back. Then there's a submaster, which is very high quality and big, but small enough to be watchable. That's ProRes. Right? PNG, ProRes. And then distribution is the small compressed file that you hand out to people to watch, and that's usually H.264 MP3 audio. We're going to go over this again, repeatedly, and especially towards the end of the class when you're all actually finishing up your film. So don't worry about it too much. Also, forget about the whole master thing, unless you end up creating something you're really proud of and want to keep around forever. But in a low stake setting in a class or for work you don't care about, there's just the submaster and the production copy and distribution copy. Had a question?
So basically, you finish your work in After Effects and then you move it to Final Cut Pro and then you get the audio. That's
Yes.
Well,
I have an initial stage where I have what's called a scratch track, which is a temporary piece of audio that gives you timing. So, and we'll go into all the steps of production in detail, especially for folks who haven't had them before, because learning how to structure these things is really important. Right? We're not born knowing how to put together an animated film. It's the stage at which you get your animatic, right? Your storyboard timed to your scratch track, your series of images. Storyboard is a series of images, one drawing per shot, and then a scratch track is your initial audio recording, and you edit the storyboards to the scratch track to create your animatic. And at that stage, you know how long each shot is. Right now, you know how many if you're going to make one After Effects comp per shot, for instance. Now you know how many you have to make, how long each of them should be. That's when you start to know time and how you can plan things. What if you have one shot that's incredibly complicated and nothing else can be in memory, right? It needs to be busted out into a separate project file. Now you know how long that needs to be. And everything is assembled at the end, Final Cut. I mean, very little actual filmmaking is done all in one piece of software ever. Right? It's very unusual. It's not often taught that way in school, which can be confusing. But what's nice is that the common glue of all this is just really some audio files and drawings, which you can make in anything. Anyway, so yeah.
2 weeks ago, where you took a line, and then you mixed with something that would change as the line changed.
Yes.
The audio changed.
Right.
So, but then you need the audio in After Effects.
Right. So what you can do here, and that's what I'm doing here, because this is what I'm about to demo again. Under Keyframe Assistant, there is the Convert Audio to Keyframes command. This is how you get volume levels from your audio. So the two really great, nearly coding-free ways to get real-time control of your animation After Effects. There's Motion Sketch, and then there is this. So this gives you a layer with a bunch of keyframes on it. Left channel, right channel, both channels. And then you use your expressions. So the simplest thing, let's just make a shape. And position. and I will say Option click to take us into to bring up an expressions window here. And here's that pick whip again.
Option click where?
And option click on any key frameable property
On the actual stuff.
on the stopwatch to bring up
Apart from mask.
what?
Apart from mask.
Oh, mask. Oh, incidentally, I think during the break, no expressions, but it is possible to script them. Found a link. Oh, it's in the wiki. Yeah. So this doesn't give us much useful because if you look at the audio levels, the numbers are too small to move this in an interesting way. So first, I notice the shape's anchor point isn't in a useful place. It's out over there. So let's hit A for anchor point and move it over. See, the anchor point is just if you've ever built a processing sketch where you move the rectangle or ellipse around, right? There's one pair of XY coordinates at the center or at the corner, depending on how you've set it in processing. That's what the anchor point is. Because ultimately, After Effects is still, dealing with the same basic concepts. So we have this, and let's say we only wanted to make this move in the y-axis. Well, first let's scale this up. Let's go back to our expression here. And right away, so it's nice that the pick whip can give us the name of something, right? It's really nice we don't have to puzzle out for ourselves that when we want this slider, we don't have to type in this comp.layer, parens, audio output, blah, 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 blah. That's nice. But it's not terribly human friendly. So right away, I want to say, this is one value, right? This is not two axes, this is one. Do I want to move the x or the y-axis, let's say? And I'm going to give this a name. Let's say var y. Let's make this move up and down. And then I'm going to say var x equals transform position 0. Because remember, arrays from processing, position is an array of 2 numbers for x and y, or 3 numbers for x, y, z for a 3D layer. So this, to me, is a lot more readable than what we had before. And also, what's nice about this is it makes it a lot easier to modify. I would encourage, given that so much in expressions involves dealing with these long, wacky chains of properties, I would say make more variables. Make this easier to deal with. Start with something like x equals transform position. I'm going to put this in the wiki so you can see that. This is a great way to start. Okay, right away you've just saved yourself the trouble of having to think about, okay, what is this transform dot position bracket 0 bracket? No, it's just x. This is just y. Now we can manipulate these x, y. And remember that in an expression, the last line should always be the value you return back to the property. And let's just make something up. D for delta. Sure. Now, right now, nothing will happen, right? Because I have to say y. Here. It's easier if you're in After Effects. You can follow along.
I just can't see the difference.
Yeah. You option click on. Yeah. I'll say that's okay. What is it? Move over. Oh, my head's blocking. Oh, okay. There we go. Well, here, why don't we just do? Why don't we just? I don't have to be sitting there. There we go. Why don't we just do it from here? Also said it'll be easier to paste this into Wiki. I just want to get it one more because now once we have this, right? I think it's a little easier to think about. Okay, well now we need to scale this. This value is too small. It's just sort of quivering. What about 10 times this layer? Better. What about 100 times? And what if I decide I'd rather it move up than down, right? Because you subtract on the y-axis, you go up. You add on the y-axis, you go down. Well, how about y minus d? Now look at that. We've gone in just a few steps from like these ridiculous, unwieldy strings of text to x comma y minus d. And now it goes up instead of down. This is the key, I believe, to making sense of scary expressions. Turn as quickly as possible, turn these long strings of properties into a simple, manageable variable, and then do some simple arithmetic on the variables. In fact, if you want to, if you prefer to keep all this, why don't we just, we could even say minus d times 100. So now all we're doing is setting these variables equal to their ridiculously long properties, and then here we're saying, here we have some simple math. And once again, the neat thing about doing all this in After Effects is that you get all of this, all the functionality of an animation program for free. So if I want motion blur, I just turn on motion blur and activate motion blur on this layer. When we look at cameras, we'll get depth of field for free.
Some of my furry friends.
And you can adjust this until you get a result you want.
Some of my furry friends learn. Some of my furry friends learn.
And you can scale. There's an expression. Let's see if this works here. Here, before I start messing with this, let's just take this because it works well. So what's nice is if you keep the class page open and I paste in some. Did we get rid of all line breaks? Just a second. There we go. Okay, what's nice if you keep the class page open, and I'm going to be pasting these into the wiki, you all can just quickly get these and copy paste it. You don't actually have to transcribe the things from the projector. And After Effects font is pretty wee for the. Anyway, so you can just pop over once I've pasted something in there. Okay, yeah. There's also a linear scale expression that can give you a little more control. I actually mostly prefer to use simple arithmetic because I can predict what will happen more. But you can also say, like, say if I want to scale d now, d equals linear d comma 0, 10, 0, 100. What that means is take this value d, which is the value of the slider. The original value is 0 to 10, and then our output value is 0 to 100. So that can scale with some more finesse. There's also exponential. There's all kinds of different commands for scaling. Right. So that's taking the numbers here, and this is really all that this really involves. Right. You're moving data between two programs, or from one transcoding, right, one type of data, audio data, to position keyframes. And all we're really doing is some basic arithmetic usually, and some text wrangling where we like get one format into another. But conceptually, that's really all there is to this, and the rest is all what we do with it. That's why I think it's so ridiculous. Like, I'm going to the Ottawa Festival today for the rest of the week, and they have this jobs fair. And you look at this jobs fair, and again and again and again, requirements these days: CS degree, CS degree. It's terrible. Everyone going like to animation school for undergrad when the credentials have changed. Most animation studios want to hire CS grads, and it's not because programming isn't valuable in animation, which is incredibly valuable. It's that, really, do you need a whole CS education to learn to do most of what you know? Like, it's a subset. Definitely, it's like developing tools is very different.
Writing shaders.
Oh yeah. Well, writing shaders is more, it's between the two, right? Because you can use them creatively, you can build a tool out of them. It's not like you aren't very well positioned to know both. But I'm saying, and certainly to work in R&D at a film studio to build tools, you need to be a full-fledged computer scientist. But in order to be an animator specifically, you only need to know a tiny subset of this. So all we're really doing, right, we told After Effects to measure our audio volume, and we got this range of numbers, right, which go, it looks like they go, let's take a look at the graph here. Where's our graph? There, you can click, the graph mode is really powerful in After Effects. You can visualize any keyframes and see, okay, look at that. So here is our, we're all the way zoomed out. Here is that piece of audio, and looks like our highest point is 13.55, and our lowest point is 2. So we can actually enter that. We want to scale that into keyframes, which are pixels. Now, you don't have to use this method, right? You can use this simple method of just kind of eyeballing it and multiplying it by 50 seems to make it move in an interesting way. If that works, great, stop. But if you want to scale it, okay, we just look at the graph and we know that this track, let's go back here and get out of the graph mode. We know that this track runs, the audio, the keyframes are from around 2 to 13. And now we can much more precisely control how this thing responds.
Some of my furry friends learn. Some of my furry friends learn.
So, let's copy that in. If any of you have done any web stuff, the pre-tag is great. It just tells it to add line, basically take pre-formatted text, add line breaks, or leave your line breaks alone, rather. So now let's take this a bit, makes it a bit more interesting, and add the time remap function. So there's our. Here's a little piece of test footage, which I have turned into ProRes. Right? Some people feel really passionately about having to take this extra step of transcoding, and they say that computers are fast enough now. Graphics cards accelerate H.264. We should be able to edit H.264. I say good luck. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. The whole thing is like it's very easy to get set in your ways, and a lot of us you'll find, I think, as time goes on, that you'll rely on the stuff you learn like while you're in undergrad than while you're in grad school. But unless you really work hard to keep up with how things change, you may miss something. So as far as I know, you're still courting disaster. If anyone wants to test this out and demonstrate that, say you can bring an H.264 file into After Effects, finish a project without weird sync issues or image corruption, like all the stuff that seems to still be happening. That's interesting because it would save us a lot of trouble converting things in different codecs. And eventually, I think, they'll throw enough computing power at this and solve it. Essentially, it has to read backwards as well as forwards. My understanding about what the real problem is. Or I guess technically, what were we saying? Back up and read forwards. Anyway, but it tends to screw things up. Anyway, so here is, and watch this. I'm going to say Command Option. Oops, let me delete it. Right back. Here, I'm going to say Command Option F. That quickly scales it to fill the screen. Of course, that would blow it up tremendously because it's an SD image. But so I am going to, and the reason I wanted to bring some live action footage into this is so this is hard to actually see what time remap is doing at first, except in live action. Enable time remapping. So drag some footage so this works best. And if you have an MP4 lying around, by all means, test that out. Drag that in and test that out. Does everyone know about KeepVid? Right? This is an enormous resource, keepvid.com. It downloads YouTube videos in a variety of formats.
Trust it when it says
right.
It's using Java.
And remember too that anything you do for class is protected fair use. You may not be able to distribute it, but oops, I copied the title, not the link. You want to copy the link and say download, and it will think a moment. You need to have Java installed and working, and it will give you all of these format options.
Correct.
Let's see. Seems to be working. So this is a priceless resource for footage. Also archive.org. And the stuff here is all Creative Commons license, so this is safe to use. Aside from school projects, you can redistribute this. You can huge archive of material. Over here. Anyway, so if you grab something to work with, here we have time remap. What time remap is it gives you a keyframe for the beginning. Now set, remember you set keyframe for this diamond shaped thing. Set a keyframe for the end. And now you can keyframe and move around any point in time. For instance, let's get some audio here. Look, I'm doing the audio preview in order to work.
Some of my furry
Okay, let's turn this off. So like, if you just play it straight through, and notice how I use the RAM preview, Control-0 or this to listen to the audio because we don't really have real-time audio playback in After Effects. Console scrub. Now it plays it real time, but if I add a keyframe here, okay, so here, the part where it says dinosaurs, I'm going to pull these keyframes apart and watch what happens. All right, and now I'm going to take these two and I'm going to copy and paste them. And you know, I'm using these triangles to move between keyframes.
The dinosaur, why wouldn't it be? The dinosaur, why wouldn't it be?
If I take the keyframe from the end and paste it at the beginning,
The dinosaur, why wouldn't it be?
right? So you remap. Yeah.
Time remapping the only way to do a freeze frame?
I don't know. It's a
Let's say we were at
right. Well, one thing you can combine it with to make it easy without really messing around. Oh, there's freeze frame.
oh, that's
But look what it does. Freeze frame just puts a time remap, and you notice this block shape here? what this is, you can right-click on any keyframe, and the not terribly intuitive toggle hold keyframe, what that means is don't interpolate it. Keep it there forever. So if you don't want a keyframe to change, you can right-click and say, and then it turns into this block, and then it won't change. So now I have free frame. But a really interesting thing happens when you take the time remap effect and you drive it with something else. So instead of, I'm going to option click here and drive this by the slider. So now the audio remapping is feeding into, the audio volume is feeding into time remap. Let's turn the audio off here so we get a better idea of what it's doing. And now you have to know when you're planning these things. Let's take that position routine we had here. You have to know what this expects, right? So in the case of time remap, we want just one number, and I forget off the top of my head whether it's 0 to 1, the whole length of the comp, or 0 to 100. We'll find that out in a second. But in order to do an expression effectively, you have to remember what the property at the end expects you to give it back. So I'm just going to paste in this routine that we had from here. And I'm going to get rid of x and y. There's no x and y here. We just have d. I'm going to have that linear scale. I'll try 0 to 100. Let's see how this works. And then I'm simply going to say d. Return. And this is like in a... oops. That when it says refresh disabled, that's said you can use the caps lock key to stop it from updating. That's if you're doing something really like computationally expensive and you want your mouse back. Oh, let's turn that audio back on.
Some of my furry friends learn. Some of my furry friends learn.
So, I mean, of course, you could change numbers to finesse it, but you see, it is 0 to 100. That's the end of the clip, right? It goes to the end when the volume is loudest. Same thing here. Using audio to drive time. Okay, so now let's take this, make this a little more interesting. Let's take this shape layer and make this a pre-comp, right? Put it inside a composition. And to keep things simple, let's put the audio amplitude inside this as well. You can actually have expressions that reach across comps and affect each other, but it's simpler right now if you just keep everything inside the same comp. So what I'm going to do now, oh, wait a second. Different demo. I'm going to leave this outside. Ignore that. So audio amplitude. And instead of animating the position, I'm going to, here, make a stupid little face. Oops. Oops. Just wanted to separate these. So,
Sir, what did you just do?
I just made some shapes.
Right, but
It's-
then
I went and-
layer stuff you were doing was.
Oh, I accidentally stuck these eyes on the same layer as the mouth. I don't want the mouth in a separate layer, so I can scale it. So yeah, that was just the same as it would be in Illustrator. I was just deleting the one with all three shapes, and then just made two layers, deleted the mouth from one of the eyes from the other. So that's just the same as you would do in Photoshop and Illustrator.
After
Yes.
you did the pre-comp, it looked like you dragged some things into themselves. Was that a key recommend?
That was just deleting layers. I just wanted to quickly make a face to do this next step. So I'll show you exactly what I just did. As fill. So if you keep drawing, these layers will become part of the same shape, right? So I just made two copies of the layer, and then I deleted the eyes from one and the mouth from the other to give me two. Well, I didn't get it right that time, but you get the idea. That's just simple drawing stuff.
No, that's right.
Yeah.
I meant right after you made the pre-comp, and when you opened the pre-comp, there was more than one track. And I think you, that,
Hmm.
maybe it was just something that started.
Yeah.
It looked like you made those three tracks and then you dropped them one to the other, and you just deleted it.
Yeah, I just made a bunch of shapes. You could do the same thing and get a lot better results with, say, a Photoshop file with multiple layers. The important thing is that the mouth be the same, or be separate, I mean. So I'm going to affect the scale of the mouth here. I'm going to hit S, and I'm going to unclick this link here so that... Now, notice how it scales right now? Not so useful. Look what happens. I'm going to hit A and move the anchor point over here. That's the center. Now, when I scale it, it scales from the anchor point. Better, right? So, and you could do this with position too. You could, but I'm not going to actually directly keyframe this to control this with audio. What I'm going to do is I'm going to animate a sequence where we start with the mouth closed and end with it open. And back here, here's our audio amplitude from before. Mouth closed, mouth open, right? So I'm going to say, I'm going to take our time remap from the little Doctor Who clip, get rid of that. Now I'm going to say time remap and paste, option click for expressions, and paste in that code, which again, if you want to try this, this is right up on the wiki.
Some of my furry friends
Okay, that's too much. Let's try.
Some of my furry friends
And it's also really important to use a clean dialogue track. That weird howling noise at the beginning. You notice how that drives the.
Some of my furry friends
Getting better.
learn
One thing that really improves the quality of these audio keys, actually, if you take the original and then you click on this and you use the smoother. I usually do smoother 3.
some of my furry friends learn
That looks a little too much. I'm going to turn that down. Undo. Let's try just 1, see what happens.
some of my furry friends learn some of my furry friends look
It's getting better, right? Also, just because you can't edit audio in After Effects very well, you can do some basic fades and things. You can edit audio keyframes, like the fact that I don't want that hoo, hoo, hoo noise. It was from some like creepy like Christian record. Ubu Web. It's a vast compilation of bizarre LP record tracks from who knows where. Anyway, so I want to get rid of that weird howling noise. So I want to go into the graph, and I can just select these and move them down to 0. Oops.
Yes.
Come on. Oh, great! Yeah, that's very effective. Yeah, and then move this down.
Some of my furry friends learn.
And you can fine tune it too if I don't want that double flap.
Some of my
So here's where holding down Command and scrubbing really helps.
Some of my furry friends
That doesn't look quite right. There we go.
learn. Some of my furry friends learn.
I have found, like, you might have read, guides for lip sync that talk about phonemes and mouth shapes. I find that you can simplify all of that to really just wide, e, higher, and round. It's maybe a high and narrow sound, but really all that really matters is that the mouth is closed when the character is not talking, closed when there's no sound, open when there is sound. But look at the Muppets; they have exactly 2 mouth positions, and it's so expressive. And it's because puppeteers are very well trained to keep sync, right? They open when the characters are making sound and close when they're not. That's really all there is to lip sync. So look how I just fine-tuned that there. You can really do very simple flapping jaw things. However, keep in mind we are not actually controlling the mouth with code. We are scrubbing within a whole comp, and the reason is you can do so much more. This could be a drawn animation. You could draw every frame. In fact, let's see if I have this somewhere. There we go. So this was from a stage play years ago, and this used the same technique to do real-time puppetry, right? This is hand-drawn, and let's use the one without the, I think that was an alpha channel. There we go. And, here, I'm just quickly going to use a composite mode to get rid of that black background, so we have only the lines. So what do? We enable time remapping. Oops, I just brought this into the little green guy's comp. There we go. Get out of graph mode. And here, notice that when time remap's turned on, you can drag, clips are no longer limited in length. You can drag them clear across. They'll stop moving when they reach the end of their default keyframe value, but you can mess with that. As we're about to, I'm just going to paste the same expression we have here into here. And notice that because this clip is a different length, it requires different scaling, right? But already,
Some of my furry friends
come on. Sometimes finding that stupid. There we go. So maybe this needs less. We know, yeah, there we go. We know we're only changing the second set of numbers because these numbers, the source scale, are what the audio keyframes, the original audio keyframes were, 2 to 13. Those aren't going to change. 0 to 1.
Some of my furry friends learn. Some of my furry friends learn. Some of my furry friends.
That's mapping the
Volume of the audio.
switches to where on the timeline.
And what's especially neat about this method is that now to get a more sophisticated response, you don't need the graph here. You don't need to come up with a more sophisticated scaling algorithm in the expression, which you could. There's a lot more powerful things you could do besides the linear scale. But why not just tweak your graph? If you want, like for instance, if right here you don't want that extreme yell, well, why not just take the expression down a notch? I mean, the character's expression, not the After Effects expression. It gives you. I go for GUI control wherever
Some of
possible.
my furry friends learn.
You're looking at the graph of the audio right now?
Mhm.
Or of-
The audio keyframe. So we generated the audio keyframe.
Could you put the list of steps to doing this besides the code onto the wiki? Just because I'm getting a bunch of errors and I copied the code exactly, so I think it's probably just either like
Well,
I named the layer wrong or
Mhm.
didn't enable an effect properly or something like that.
Well, I'll be away this week, but we can go over this again next time. You basically want to generate audio keyframes. Do I already have a tutorial for this?
Could you post this project online? So
Yeah,
we can
sure, yeah.
see the project itself?
Sure. Let's see. I think I can do file save as CS55. Okay. So for next week, no homework, but practice After Effects. It seems like that's going to be the most important sort of factor in trying to keep everyone on the same page. So if you are, if you feel you need to build up your skills, practice some. Throw some things in, play with the composite modes, play with masking, keyframing, showing and hiding properties. Don't even worry about code. Don't even worry about adding expressions or scripts. Just take this time to get more comfortable with the program itself. Yeah.
If over the course, I know you just listed a couple of things that we should be thinking about. Could you just make a list of the things that you want to make sure you know online? Because it would be, we'll all like probably
Right.
tutorials.
It's in the syllabus. If you want to see, if you want to see the skills that we'll be covering. Like today, we had strategies for we didn't get to proxies. We'll look at that later. That's less important for animating stills than live video. A proxy is when, and we can come back to that. That's when you render out a low res file to swap in for your high res file at the end of your project. Less important to animation because even 4K source image is just a still image. That's usually when you're dealing with huge amounts of video. But yeah, so you can get an idea of it.
The project you just described, is this a process that we would use to coordinate sound and movement?
Sure.
So that basically applies to everything, right? So anytime you want to coordinate movement, obviously it doesn't have to be the mouth only, right? But that
Right. It's an axis of control. Start thinking about these things not as sort of inviolable. Okay, the mouse, the motion sketch is X, Y. It's just two axes, right? They can drive anything. Think of audio control not as the volume of the speaking character's voice, but as just an axis of control. It can drive anything.
So audio and movement basically to coordinate.
Yeah, anything.
Okay.
Yeah. So I just want to see if I have. There we go. But, tutorials, After Effects. I also have some After Effects tutorials here. No, just the one. Okay, no, I do not have the audio. But you'll have the video capture of this. So,
Cool.
yeah, thanks.